those of you that are in here already, could I ask you to just drop a quick yes if you can PowerPoint? Right, well, I'm going to make start then because we need as much. So, the session's recording for anyone who will then want to go back and listen to this again. But let's get started then. So as I said, this session, we're going to just have sort of one last round on language paper 2, question 2. And we're going to be using a different paper this time, so it's all fresh for you. The purpose of this session really is to get the practice of reading and annotating in time to as well as getting some prep in question 2 as well. So I'm going to treat this pretty much as if you were in the room with me with a couple of tasks that I'll need you to get on with. And when I set you off on those tasks, please always make sure your microphone's muted. But do get on with the task. Keep me on so that I can come back around and talk to you and tell you when we're going to move on. Okay. If at any point you do need to stop me because you have a question, I'm not really looking at that chat at all at the moment. So please just unmute yourself and just interrupt me, and I'll try and keep on top of every question as we go through. So can you please make sure that you have access to all of the things here? So you need the exam paper, the insert, and the insert should have source A, the other side of the Dale, and source B, the ragged school. You will need a highlighter, preferably, if you've got it in front of you. Obviously, if you haven't got the paper in front of you and you couldn't print it, that's not a problem. But maybe just have some paper where you can be making notes based on what you read. And yeah, just somewhere to make your notes. So I want to talk to you about what you will need to do at the very start of the exam. So imagine you have just walked into the exam hall, and this is going to be the exact same for paper 2 and for paper 1. So the advice I'm giving you now applies to both. So if it was me, this is what I would do, and it's something I suggest you do as well. So please make a note of this. Flick through the exam paper first and read all of the questions. This will allow you then to do something that we call active reading when you read the insert afterwards, and it will only take you a minute or two. So JJ, can you tell me, what do you think I mean by active reading? If we flick through the exam paper first to look at the questions before we read the insert, what do you think active reading would be?
Would it be like looking for what the questions are? So like looking for the answers for the questions as you're reading it?
Yeah, brilliant. So obviously it makes sense to know what you're looking for in the extracts before you start reading, which means as soon as you do start reading, straight away you can be picking out bits of information that you know you are going to need. So then have the inserts. Please go into the exam with highlighters and pick out everything you can see that is relevant to the questions you've just read. Right, so please remember you have 15 minutes. So that's really not a lot of time for paper 2. That is just over 7 minutes per insert on paper 2. So do be aware of the time. Okay, well, I'm just gonna, that's better. Let's flick through like this. Okay, so this is going to be your first task. I want you to have a feel of what reading in timed conditions and annotating is like. So I'm going to set this timer for 15 minutes. And in that 15 minutes, you need to make sure that you have understood those texts, but also be highlighting and annotating evidence that you know will be needed when you write up your Section 8 answers. But we're going to focus, once we've done this, on those ideas for question 2. So before we begin, could I ask you all please to scroll through the exam paper and find question 2 and make sure that you know what you're being asked to do. So the question says, very similar to the one we looked at today, you need to refer to source A and source B for this question. The children at the primary school and the ragged school behave very differently. Use details from both sources to write a summary of the differences between the behaviour of the children at the two schools. So, Cassie, can you just tell me what is the focus of that question? What have you got to bear in mind when you're reading these inserts? What's the focus?
Is it to like show the difference between both sources?
You're right, it is differences, but it's more specific than that. What is it the differences between? Can you see, Cassie?
Is it the schools?
So it is at the two schools. Read it again. So use details from both sources to write a summary of the differences between the behaviour.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it is about the two schools, it is the differences, but it's specifically asking you to focus on the behaviour. So before I set this timer for 15 minutes, and I'll mute myself so I'm not distracting you, does anyone have any questions about what you're going to need to do now? Excellent. Right. 15 minutes is going into the timer. Get ready to share your ideas.
Miss.
Hello. You're right, Max.
Yeah. This exam paper, was it handed out on Monday? Because I wasn't in.
It's on the portal, Matthew.
Oh right. Okay.
Okay.
Hold on. Thank you, Miss.
That's all right. Mute yourself now. Thank you. Okay. 15 minutes. Matt, see if you can find it in that time. Everyone else, make sure you are annotating and be ready to share your thoughts. Off you go. Hi everyone. So the timer is slightly behind what we actually are because I clicked off it. You've actually got about 6 minutes left. Just 3.5 minutes. 45 seconds, just finish up your notes. Okay, right, let's leave it there. Can I have you all back with me then? Let's go through our ideas. So I'm hoping you found that actually, as much as it feels worse having 2 papers to read in 15 minutes, that it's absolutely doable, because it is. Okay, you will be able to manage it. I think sometimes the thought of it is worse than the reality. So this table that I'm showing you on my screen here should look very similar to what you did in lessons. So we're going to talk through a couple of ideas. So rather than sending you off to do this again, let's just talk about them out loud. So let's start with source A. First of all, Phoebe, can you just summarise for me, what was the behaviour like of the children in source A?
They like really calm and nice.
Yes, excellent. They were calm, they were polite. What could you add to that, Aoife?
They all just like the inspector when he walked past, and you could tell that they were really happy to be there.
Excellent point. They are very happy to be there. They are keen learners. Good. Let's contrast that then. Caris, can you talk me through the behaviour in source B? What did you notice? Caris? Okay, not there. Elliot, can you do that for me?
Can you repeat the question, please, miss?
So what do you notice about the behaviour in source B as a whole?
The children were quite they were quite rough, and they were quite rude to each other. Like they were very disrespectful from what I've read.
Yeah, absolutely. They were very rude, very aggressive, really quite violent behaviour at times as well. Good. So what I'd like you to do, could you just jot down quickly the key quotations you would pick out? Let's just go for 2 from source B, and please just be ready to tell me what you would infer from that. Remember that inference is something that we read between the lines. Okay, so I'm just going to give you maybe a minute here just to quickly scribble down what those key quotes would be. And remember, we're looking for key words and phrases rather than whole sentences. So just a minute to get that down, and we can talk about it afterwards. Okay, right, so Cassie, can you tell me what quotation you would have pulled out for source A and then what you can infer from it, please?
When it says a calm, bright, welcoming and orderly building.
Right, now, interesting you would pick that out because, Cassie, would you say that that quotation is about the children's behaviour?
No, actually.
Right, okay. So we've got a few of these mistakes cropping up again, which is still okay because we need to make them to know that how to do it right. So this is why I say you have to really focus on what the question is asking. So if I was to ask you about the behaviour then, Cassie, have you got something else you would pick out instead?
like when they're saying we passed said, oh, each child we passed said hello brightly to show they had like good manners.
Brilliant. Okay. Is that what your inference would be?
Kind of, but like maybe because infer that the school's like a happy place to be.
Good. Yeah. So you would be able to suggest, well, we would be able to infer from this, the fact that they say it brightly suggests that they're happy to be there and that they've got good manners. So there would be an inference because we're not told that. We're inferring that. So let's take one more from source A. JJ, what would you have picked out for the behaviour in source A? JJ, are you still?
Yeah, sorry, I missed my headset. Just freaked out then.
That's all right. What would you say then for source A?
For source A, they're really polite and all saying like sister to, is it, I'm guessing sisters of the church or of the school.
Yep. So what quotation would you use to show their behaviour?
Good afternoon, sister. So they're all really polite to her.
So good afternoon, sister. If you have a look at that line on 15, is that the children saying that to her?
No.
So would that show really the behaviour of the children?
No.
So try again, see if you can find a quote for me that's about the behaviour of the children.
Each child we passed said hello.
JJ, I don't know where you've been, but we have just talked about that quote.
Yeah, my headset freaked out. I had to unplug it and plug it back in, miss.
That's all right. All right. Well, just make sure that you're following where we are now. So
Okay.
what other one could we have picked out if we've already had that one?
It was clear from Sister Brendan the children in her care were a source of right delight.
Right. Okay. Good. We're a source of real delight. So what would your inference be? What would your reading between the lines be for that quote?
So probably like that she's made them that way. That she's made them making sure they've got manners and stuff. Like she's taught them how to be polite.
Okay, so we can say in their education, it's clear that they have been disciplined to be kind young individuals. Okay, that would be an inference. Thank you, JJ. Let's look at source B quickly. Matt, did you manage to get hold of the insert? No. Okay. Right. Who's got Aoife? What would you have picked out for source B?
I would have said that it was like a really unhappy place to be. I haven't gotten any quotes yet because I was just looking through it when you asked.
Okay, well, when you were going through, make sure you're pulling those quotations out. So when you were going through it, what phrases were jumping out at you as evidence that the behaviour was really bad there?
When she was saying that there was the two girls of 12 or 13 years of age quarrelled.
Okay, so we've got quarrelling. Elliot, what other quotation would you have picked out?
Where it says no school could possibly be worse than this.
Okay, now that's an interesting quotation because I thought someone might pick that out. Now you would think, wouldn't you, but that suggests that the behaviour is really bad. However, would you say that one clearly shows the behaviour?
Not necessarily, because it could just mean like the facilities and stuff. Now we've read it back.
Yeah, absolutely. But this is an example of where you would, I suppose we're reading it thinking, yeah, obviously it does mean that with the behaviour and everything, but it's not explicitly about the behaviour. So maybe that would be one that in the exam you think, oh, I might not use that one actually. Is there any other one that you would have pulled out for the behaviour, Elliot?
1 second. Where it says, I had occasion to punish a boy slightly this morning. He swore most horribly and rushed from the school.
Good. Okay, so obviously that's a really long quotation. So what phrase, maybe a couple of words would you have picked out for that?
He swore most horribly and rushed from the school.
Yeah, I think swore most horribly would be enough there. So what would your inference be? What would your reading between the lines be?
That the behaviour of the children is really bad, and that they just can't like control like the children, like as a whole.
Yeah, there's just a real lack of control, isn't there, from the people who are supposed to be in charge. Now, I don't think for a moment that that is because of the teachers. What is the reason for that?
Because of the children, just like of the school as a whole, and because of the way they've been brought up by the parents.
Yeah, absolutely. The way they've been brought up. Good. So can I just check, Elliot, whilst you're still talking, can you still see my screen okay?
No, it's gone off, miss.
Right. Let's go back and make sure I'm sharing. What about now?
Yeah, it's back on.
Brilliant. Okay. Right. So this slide here, I won't talk through it because of obviously time. I want to make sure we are ready to be logged off by 1:15. But I will put this on the portal, this PowerPoint, and you can have a look at it in your own time. But what I do want to talk you through here is advice that the examiners have actually given us about this question and how to do it well. So it says the mark scheme does not reward the number of textual details cited, but the standard and the quality of their response and the inferences made. So this is just evidence, as I was of what I was telling you earlier, that it's inferences that determine your mark. Obviously, you need to be using as good a piece of evidence as you can, but it's the quality of that inference and it's how far you take that inference. Remember, don't just say the first thing and leave it there. If you can add on more to what you're saying, you always should. So textual references and or direct quotations can be used. Students are only using them to inform content, not to analyse language. So this is something you need to remember for this question. You are only inferring, which means at no point should you be saying the use of this simile or this adjective, for example. If you're ever in doubt and you think, oh, I'll just say something about techniques, don't do that, because it's not where you're getting the marks. If anything, it actually tells the examiner that you don't really know what this question's asking you to do. So please don't analyse language. It's an extra hassle for you that you don't need at this point. The language analysis comes in the next question, so you're just repeating yourself otherwise. Whilst there will always therefore be a number of textual details that students can use in theory, in practice they should be selective about ones that they can infer something about. Equally, students should bear in mind the time that is commensurate with the marks and waiting for the task, and try not to cite too many textual examples which could lead them to treat each superficially. So there's a few key things that you need to take from that. So the first thing, when it's saying whilst there's a number of textual details, what that's saying is the texts are going to have loads of things you could comment on, but this is where you have to show that you are being selective, and you have to show that you are being judicious, which means you're picking very carefully the evidence that you use rather than just going for the first thing you can see. Equally, what it means there is just saying that the amount of time you should spend on this question is very much in line with the amount of marks. So we already know 8 marks, roughly 10 minutes. And then finally, it's saying try not to cite too many textual references. So don't use too many quotations. This is why I say stick to keywords or phrases, because when it says it would lead you to treat them superficially, what that means is you'll just say something very briefly on the surface, but you won't really get into the meaty inference just because you've got too many quotations to deal with. So you're always better going for those smaller, more detailed quotations that give you more to say, rather than having big, long quotations that you can't really deal with appropriately. Okay, now the next slide is an example of what a top answer would look like for this question. Now, because of the time, I'm not going to talk through it with you, but I will put this PowerPoint straight onto the portal as soon as I sign off, so that you can have a look at that in your own time. Before we finish, did anyone have any questions for me? Okay. In that case then, thank you lot for joining. I hope it's been good just to recap on a different paper the skills we've been working on today. If anything does come up, please drop me an email or I'll see you on Monday. Sorry, Caris, we literally are just signing off, and I'm really sorry if you've had some trouble and can't hear anything. I have recorded the lesson, so when it's downloaded, I'll be able to upload that onto the portal and you might be able to hear it a bit better then. All right, thank you, everybody. I'll see you on Monday.
Goodbye, miss.
Bye.